What if the daughter you lost a decade ago suddenly knocked at your door? For 10 long years, Rick and Sarah lived with the unbearable weight of a single question. What happened to their daughter, Emily? It all started on a quiet Sunday afternoon. The sun was shining, birds were chirping, and the local park, just a few blocks from their home, was bustling with families. Rick and Sarah sat on a bench, chatting with neighbors, while little Emily, only 6 years old at the time, ran happily between the monkey bars and the slide. They'd been to this park countless times. It felt safe, familiar. But in one tragic moment of distraction, that sense of safety shattered forever. They looked away for just 2 minutes. When Rick turned back, the slide was empty. Emily was gone. Panic set in instantly. Rick bolted from the bench, frantically calling her name as he sprinted through the park. Sarah's voice cracked as she joined in. Neighbors joined the search. But Emily had vanished. No trace, no scream, no clue. Within minutes, police were on the scene. Helicopters, canine units, missing posters, nothing brought her back. And then came the waiting. Endless days turned into months. Birthdays passed without candles. Her room stayed untouched, a shrine of childhood frozen in time. The world kept moving, but Rick and Sarah's lives had stopped. Then, on a rainy Tuesday night, exactly 10 years after her disappearance, a knock echoed through their quiet home. Rick opened the door, and time stood still. There, drenched from the storm, stood a teenage girl. Her face was familiar, hauntingly so. She had Emily's eyes. Her hair, though longer, still curled at the ends like it did when she was a child. "Mom, Dad," the girl said softly. "It's me." Sarah collapsed to her knees. Rick stood frozen, his mouth open, struggling to breathe. Tears streamed down their faces as they embraced the girl who had vanished from their lives a decade earlier. But as joyous as the reunion was, something about Emily felt different. Her hug was real, but guarded. Her eyes, though filled with tears, carried a depth far beyond her years. And then she whispered, "I need to tell you something." The living room turned silent as they sat together, hands trembling, hearts pounding. She took a deep breath. "The day I disappeared, someone took me." Rick clenched his fists. Sarah covered her mouth, her heart aching. Emily's voice shook as she continued, "I remember everything now." She began her story. That sunny afternoon, as her parents laughed with a neighbor, a man walked past the monkey bars and offered her a popsicle. Innocent and trusting, she followed him. He led her behind a tree, just out of sight. Before she could scream, he clamped a gloved hand over her mouth and carried her to a van parked nearby. Emily kicked and screamed, but no one heard. Her parents were only yards away, yet completely unaware. The man shoved her into the back of the van and sped off. She pounded on the windows, watching her parents shrink into the distance. Her screams went unanswered. The van drove for hours. When it finally stopped, it was nearly dark. Emily remembered being dragged into the woods, deeper and deeper, until they reached a run-down wooden cabin. Inside, it smelled of mold and rot. The man opened a trapdoor hidden beneath a rug and forced her down into a cold, dark cellar. No windows, a stained mattress, a bucket in the corner. That became her world. He barely spoke, Emily recalled, her voice barely audible. He only opened the hatch to throw down food or water. Weeks passed in darkness. She lost track of time. Then, one day, he brought her upstairs for a bath. He asked her name with a crooked smile and handed her a pair of pajamas. "I thought maybe..." "He wasn't so bad," Emily confessed. But that was the beginning of something worse. For the first few years, he treated her like a doll, dressing her, feeding her, teaching her to obey. But as she grew older, his control tightened. She wasn't just his prisoner. She became his servant, forced to clean, cook, and eventually sleep next to him. Emily lived every moment in fear. Disobedience meant being thrown back into the basement. The basement became her greatest fear, and his most powerful weapon. But despite the years of abuse, Emily never gave up. Inside, something remained unbroken. A flicker of hope. A memory of her real home. Of her parents. Then, one day, something changed. He forgot to hide the TV remote. It was such a small thing, but to Emily, it felt like the universe had cracked open. She turned on the television for the first time in her life. Her fingers fumbled with the buttons, unsure of how the strange device worked. Eventually, the screen lit up. A news anchor was speaking. Behind them, a photo. A girl. The name beneath the image said, "Emily R. missing since age 6. Age progressed image." She froze. Her breath caught in her throat. "It was me," she whispered. "The girl on the screen was me." In that moment, it all came back. The park, the man, the van, her parents. She remembered everything. With her heart pounding, she turned off the TV, hid the remote, and ran to every window and door in the cabin. Locked. Every single one. And then, she heard the engine outside. He was coming back. Emily scrambled through the living room, searching for anything she could use. Knives? All plastic. Cabinets? Empty. And then, under the couch, something metal. A pipe. She didn't think. She didn't hesitate. She crouched behind the door, pipe in hand, and waited. The sound of gravel crunched under heavy boots. Her captor was steps away. Emily's heart pounded so loudly it echoed in her ears. She tightened her grip on the pipe. The doorknob turned. As the door opened, everything slowed down. Her captor stepped inside. Emily struck with all her strength. The metal pipe hit his head with a sickening thud. He staggered, eyes wide in shock. Before he could recover, she hit him again, this time on the arm. He collapsed. Emily didn't wait. She ran. Barefoot, heart racing, she bolted into the woods, sprinting through the darkness with no idea where she was going. She just knew she had to get as far away as possible. Branches scratched her skin. Rocks tore at her feet. Every sound, every shadow, felt like he was right behind her. She kept running, for hours. Eventually, dawn broke. The trees thinned, her legs trembled, and her body ached. But then, she saw something. A gas station. It looked like a lighthouse in the middle of nowhere. Emily stumbled inside, wild-eyed and exhausted. The fluorescent lights stung her eyes. She hadn't been around people in years. Every face was a stranger, every sound overwhelming. She grabbed a bag of chips and a bottle of water and approached the cashier. Her hands shook. Her clothes were torn. Dirt covered her arms. Her voice was barely a whisper. I need help." The woman behind the counter tilted her head. "Sweetheart, are you okay?" That kindness, those simple words, broke Emily. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She didn't even know where to begin. The cashier ushered her to the back, wrapped her in a blanket, and handed her water. She called the police immediately. "I don't know who this girl is," she told them, "but something's wrong. She needs help." Emily waited in the back, curled up, still on edge. But when the sirens grew closer, her heart began to calm. 2 officers stepped inside. When they saw her, their expressions changed from routine professionalism to stunned realization. "Are you Emily R.?" She nodded, her voice cracking. "I think so." They exchanged looks of disbelief. One pulled out a photo, an old image of a little girl with a wide smile and curly hair. "That's you," the officer whispered. For the first time in 10 years, Emily felt safe. The journey back home felt like a dream. The patrol car pulled up in front of a house she had only seen in her memories. Her hands trembled as she stepped out. The door opened, and there stood her parents. Sarah dropped to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. Rick stood frozen, tears already streaming down his face. Emily took one step forward. "Mom, I'm home." They ran to her, held her like they never wanted to let go. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. Too much had been lost. But in that moment, they were whole again. The days that followed were filled with both joy and pain. Emily bravely shared her story with detectives, giving them every detail she could remember. The man who stole her childhood was tracked down within a week and arrested without incident. He would never hurt anyone again. But Emily's journey wasn't over. She had to learn how to live again. The world had changed in 10 years. She had never used a phone, never had friends, never learned how to ride a bike or go to prom or do any of the things kids her age did. But she wasn't broken. With therapy, love, and fierce determination, Emily rebuilt her life. And then, something incredible happened. At 22, she became a private investigator. The same girl who was once locked in a basement, silenced and hidden from the world, now devoted her life to finding others like her. She specialized in missing persons cases, using her own survival as proof that hope is never lost. One day, during a press conference, a reporter asked her, "Emily, how did you survive all those years?" Her answer was simple. "I never forgot who I was, and I never stopped believing that someone out there still loved me." Emily's story became one of resilience and redemption. She taught the world that even in the darkest of places, light can break through. That the human spirit, when fueled by love and the will to live, can overcome anything. Her parents, once shattered, watched their daughter become a symbol of strength. And though the scars remained, they were no longer signs of weakness. They were proof of survival. Emily's name became a beacon for other families still waiting. And every time she solved a case, every time she brought another child home, she remembered the girl who stared at the park slide and disappeared. She remembered the pipe, the forest, the gas station. And most of all, she remembered the moment she knocked on her parents' door and whispered, "I'm home."